Todos los porros van al cielo is more than a witty title born from the irreverent humor of Aida. It is a statement about the collision between disillusionment and belief, between escape and redemption. It takes the raw realism of Esperanza Sur and transforms it into a poetic commentary on modern alienation, suggesting that even in the fumes of hopelessness, people still look for transcendence. As an interpretive work within the Aida universe, this story becomes both a continuation and an inversion of the original series' logic. The familiar characters still live among broken walls, sarcasm, and unemployment, but something changes in the tone. Instead of mocking their vices, the story studies them as rituals of survival. The cigarette, the bottle, the joint, all become metaphors for the fragile ways ordinary people keep breathing when life offers no clean air. The opening scene of Todos los porros van al cielo immediately sets that tone. The neighborhood is painted as a canvas of repetition. The same old graffiti, the same sound of television from open windows, and the same sense of being stuck in time. The camera, if imagined cinematically, would glide through narrow alleys filled with echoes of laughter and shouting. It doesn't mock this place, it observes it with melancholy tenderness. Aida appears first, sweeping the hallway while muttering curses about unpaid bills. Her movements are automatic, shaped by years of exhaustion. The moment Luisma walks in, dazed and carrying a joint like a sacred relic, the audience laughs, but only for a second. There's a sadness in the way he smokes, as if he's not just inhaling marijuana, but the weight of a life that never took off. In the next sequence, Luisma sits in the park, his face illuminated by the dim orange of a street light. His monologue about heaven, where nobody judges you for being high, becomes both a punchline and a revelation. The absurdity of his words hides a profound yearning, a world without shame, where broken people are still worthy of rest. This balance between ridicule and empathy has always been Aida's secret weapon, but here it becomes the central narrative engine. The idea that all joints go to heaven turns into an allegory of inclusion, a way of saying that all mistakes, all wasted chances, all people society labels as useless deserve a place of peace. The scene between Aida and Kema that follows deepens this idea. Kema, ever the moral optimist, scolds Luisma for setting a bad example for children. Aida interrupts, tired and sharp, "At least he's not hurting anyone." That one sentence captures the moral ambiguity of the story. It's a quiet rebellion against the world's obsession with perfection. In Esperanza Sur, survival itself is a virtue, and the absence of malice can be enough to redeem someone. This philosophy underlines the entire narrative, turning moral failure into a new form of grace. As the film progresses, Luisma's philosophy spreads through the neighborhood, the bakery, the bar, even the hair salon. All become stages for discussions about whether heaven exists for the poor. Each scene mixes satire with raw humanity. Mauricio, always the opportunist, decides to commercialize the idea by selling rolling papers with angel wings printed on them. His mockery contrasts with the sincerity of others who actually begin to take Luisma's words seriously. The story walks a tightrope between parody and faith, never letting the audience fully decide which side it's on. That tension becomes its power, the refusal to draw a clear line between stupidity and spirituality. The turning point arrives when Luisma is interviewed by a local journalist who sees potential in his movement. The scene is both hilarious and tragic. The camera captures his nervous hands, his inability to articulate his own religion. And yet, his eyes reveal something pure, a conviction that somehow, amidst all his mistakes, he has found peace. The journalist, of course, twists his words into a viral headline, "The Saint of Smoke." Overnight, Luisma becomes a meme. Kids imitate him. Social media debates whether he's a genius or a fool, and the residents of Esperanza Sur suddenly find themselves living inside a circus. The story here critiques modern fame with surgical precision. In a world that rewards irony over authenticity, even an honest fool becomes entertainment. One of the most powerful sequences takes place late at night, when Aida finds her son asleep in the park surrounded by candles. It's a scene of maternal despair. and yet it glows with affection. She whispers that she wishes she could believe in something, anything the way he does. Luisma, half awake, mumbles that heaven must be like this, Mama. Quiet and full of people who've stopped pretending. It's the most sincere line in the film, delivered with childlike simplicity, and it carries the story's entire emotional weight. Aida's tears, half frustration and half pride, mark the exact intersection between reality and miracle. From a thematic standpoint, Todos los porros van al cielo is about the human need to sanctify failure. In most stories, redemption comes through transformation. The sinner reforms, the lost soul finds purpose. But in Aida's world, transformation is almost impossible. Poverty, routine, and systemic neglect trap people in the same patterns. What this story proposes instead is a different kind of redemption. Acceptance. Luisma doesn't change. He doesn't quit drugs, find a job, or become enlightened. Yet paradoxically, he achieves peace because he stops hating himself. That subtle redefinition of salvation, from success to self-forgiveness, is revolutionary in its quietness. Cinematically, the story thrives on contrast. The visual texture would likely mix harsh realism with dreamlike imagery. The smoke that drifts through every scene becomes a spiritual metaphor, transforming the neighborhood into a purgatory of sorts. When sunlight pierces the haze during the final act, it doesn't symbolize divine intervention, but rather the persistence of life itself. The cinematography's muted palette mirrors the emotional exhaustion of its characters, while the occasional slow zoom into their faces captures fleeting moments of truth, a reminder that behind every joke lies an entire history of pain and love. The narrative's pacing mirrors addiction, cyclical, repetitive, and slow. The story doesn't build toward a grand climax, but rather circles back on itself, emphasizing stagnation as both curse and comfort. By the end, nothing seems to have changed on the surface. The bar is still full of gossip, Mauricio still schemes for profit, and Aida still works double shifts. Yet something invisible lingers, a tenderness born from collective absurdity. The laughter has softened, the insults carry affection, the neighborhood remains broken, but less lonely. Personally, what strikes me about Todos los porros van al cielo is how it transforms everyday banality into existential poetry. It doesn't glorify drugs or chaos. Instead, it recognizes them as symptoms of despair. It suggests that escapism itself can be an act of rebellion, a way of saying, I refuse to give up, even if all I can do is dream through smoke. As someone who has observed how humor operates among those who struggle the most, I see this story as a tribute to the resilience of the powerless. It captures the paradox of working-class life, laughter as survival, irony as armor. Comparing it to the original Aida, this narrative is more introspective and metaphysical. The sitcom thrived on social satire and caricature. Todos los porros van al cielo transcends that by turning its jokes into prayers. Luisma evolves from comic relief into a tragic philosopher, the Don Quixote of the barrio. His windmills are joints, his Sancho Panza is hunger, and his Dulcinea is peace of mind. He dreams of a heaven that accepts losers because he knows he will never be anything else. And in that honesty lies his grace. Aida herself becomes the emotional anchor of the story, embodying the contradiction between cynicism and love. Her arc is quieter but equally profound. She doesn't believe in Luisma's saint, but she begins to believe in the possibility of gentleness. Her tired smile in the final scene, when she tells him she'll light one for your saint, not for me, carries more redemption than any sermon could. It's the story's ultimate message. Heaven isn't a place, but a moment of understanding between two lost souls. On a symbolic level, the porro represents everything society despises about failure: laziness, addiction, irresponsibility. By sending it to heaven, the story defies the moral hierarchies that define worth. It argues that compassion must extend even to those who seem irredeemable. The humor softens the argument, but the emotional truth is radical. This is what makes Aida and this imagined film within its universe so powerful. It humanizes those the world prefers to ignore. In its final minutes, when Luisma looks at the sky and says, "They're all up there now, Mama," laughing, we understand that the story was never about death or drugs, but about perspective. It's about finding dignity in absurdity, holiness in failure. That perhaps is the closest Aida ever comes to philosophy. And for an audience accustomed to laughing at these characters, the realization is disarming. Suddenly the joke isn't on them, it's on us, on our need to categorize, to judge, to measure worth by productivity. Todos los porros van al cielo is not a redemption story in the conventional sense. It's an invitation to rethink what redemption means. It doesn't preach or moralize, it breathes, stumbles, and laughs. It turns the act of lighting a joint into an act of prayer, not because of the drug itself, but because of the shared moment of peace it represents. In a world addicted to judgment, such moments of acceptance are the closest thing we have to heaven. When the credits roll, nothing explodes. No one is saved, and yet the viewer feels lighter. The smoke fades, but the tenderness remains. It's a cinematic sigh, weary, ironic, and strangely hopeful. And in that final breath, we see the essence of Aida, the beauty of imperfection, the holiness of laughter, and the quiet, smoky heaven that ordinary people build among the ruins of their lives.